So my name is Alex, or Jay, whatever. I'm the chief security researcher for Bitdefender, and one of the projects that I'm closely involved with is our team that does vulnerability analysis on IoTs. Basically, we hack toasters. We hack um, pleasure toys that are connected to the internet. We hack power outlets. We hack anything that has software embedded into it and has some form of connectivity. And the thing that we're trying to outline and the things that we're trying to discover is whether or not these can be turned into weapons against their owners, and more specifically, not just by hacking your own smart TV, but mostly focused on whether or not you can hack 10,000 smart TVs or 100,000 cameras or 1 million power outlets. So we're looking at things that may and will affect the entire world. So the topic of today is IoT, is the threat real? The reason for that is there's a lot of hype around IoT. So first of all, let's do a first interactive waking up session. Who here believes that IoT security is just a hype? And don't be afraid to admit it, because there's a lot of people that do. Okay. Who here believes that IoT security is a real issue? Okay, then my presentation is finished. Thank you very much. Then I'm going to give you a bit more details, a bit more meat on that particular topic. So, are you familiar with the concept of botnets? Yes? No? Show of hands? Just so I know if I need to explain the term. Okay. In order to understand the phenomenon, we have built a bunch of IoT honeypots. Honeypots, yes, everybody? Yes, perfect. So what we're trying to understand is the frequency of attacks. We've spread them across the entire world, so we have honeypots from Bolivia to Tokyo to Vancouver to Sydney, absolutely everywhere in the world, in all IP ranges. And we're trying to understand how fast these are targeted. They're all ARM-based from a CPU architecture. And what happens after they get compromised. This is a statistic from about 2 months of running the honeypots. They were compromised, like literally compromised, payloads deployed onto them 2 million times in 2 months. And since then, we've grown the network, and the number is significantly bigger now. And what we've discovered is that they're preparing for, so botnets are made of zombies, so I've made this maybe not so inspired reference to World War Z. Basically, they're waiting for commands, or they are serving their command and control server. And we've identified so far 8 botnet families. I'm sure you're familiar with Mirai, right? From last year, when the huge DDoS attack output of something like 650 gigabits per second, taking down Brian Krebs' website, Netflix, Twitter, and a number of other websites, done with DVR cameras hacked with telnet and default passwords. So right now, we're looking at 8 botnets, and each one of those botnets has several variants. For example, Mirai has about 83 variants just now. GavGit is a botnet that was initially spotted in 2014, so actually long before Mirai surfaced, so long before people were aware that there's a big issue with securing these DVR cameras. And basically what we're seeing so far is that it's a DDoS as a service. What we're doing is that we're letting the attackers drop payloads. We're letting those binary files and payloads connect to the command and control servers, and we're behaving like one of the zombies in the botnet. We're trying to understand what kind of commands we're going to receive, and we're trying to trick the botnet owners into believing that we are one of their zombies. And that provides us with a lot of intelligence into what they're planning to do with them, and exactly how they're planning to attack their next targets. So, no? There we go. one of the main topics of today is why do these botnets happen? And this is the feed from Reddit, from Internet of Shit. It's something that I strongly recommend. It's fun and it's educational. And it's stuff like, I don't know, Internet of Things teddy bear leaked 2 million parents and kid message recordings. And this looks like clickbait, but trust me, Internet of Shit is actually a feed that's reliable. Those are, news that have been tested, they have been looked upon, they have been vetted, and they are true. They're not clickbait. They are actually real. And actually, each one of these, except for the portable fish finder, which is my personal favorite because it shows exactly just how crazy IoT is today, each one of these has a known vulnerability that can be remotely exploited. And one of the one of the main things that would be interesting to look at is how IoT has crept on us, how IoT has crawled into our lives. Every now and then I talk to people and they're telling me, I don't have any smart devices in my house. So just out of curiosity, is there anybody here that doesn't have any IoT in their houses? So we have 2 people who need to be informed about how things really are, 3 people. The thing is, we used to have parallel port printers, right? Now we have USB printers, and now there are no printers. All the printers are network connected, right? And you can telnet into printers. And most of those telnet services don't have authentication or have like 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can actually see the print queue, and you can actually extract documents from that. So if anybody's in the same network with you, they're going to be able to see all the documents sent to print. Now, printers are IoTs. What else? We used to have dumb TVs. Now, I don't think any stores are selling anything but smart TVs. So all of these things are creeping into our lives gradually, and people don't actually realize that this is happening. And it's natural, and everything is becoming connected. By the way, the router is also an IoT, even if it's a modem. So even if it's a ZTE or Huawei modem, it's still software IoT, and there's actually a number of exploits for Huawei modems. Not to mention, of course, the smartphone, tablet, and PC. So this is how the future is going to look like. IoT is unavoidable. Whatever you're going to purchase from now on is going to become gradually connected. Even chairs, I don't know, remotes, absolutely everything is going to become connected. So let's go through the major issues that we've identified. First of all, by far, the biggest issue is undocumented hard-coded passwords into appliances. This year, we actually did a talk at DEF CON about a particular firmware of a camera that we discovered had 2 users hard-coded into the firmware, basically guest and admin. You set up the camera, and at the end of the setup process, it tells you you have to change the admin password because security policies. And we're like, great, awesome, that's the way it should be done. And we change the admin password, and then we go deeper into the firmware. We hijack the bootloader and blah, 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 and we get access to the file system. And we see a config file that had other users hard-coded into the firmware, which were user, and guest. And we go to Shodan, and we see about 250,000 of these exposed in the internet. Because one other thing that they were doing is that, are you familiar with UPnP? Now, even though some of you are, I'm going to go ahead and tell you what UPnP is. UPnP stands for Universal Plug and Play. And if you need to remember anything from this talk, is go home, check if your router has UPnP enabled, and turn it off. Let me tell you what UPnP does. Are you familiar with port forwarding? All of you, yeah? Now, UPnP is automatic port forward. You place a device in your network, and through UPnP, the device tells your router, please forward all incoming connections to my web server, or please forward all incoming connections to my video server, or whatever. In this case, in this particular case of the firmware, it was happening without the user's knowledge and without actually being needed. They were synchronizing the feeds through their cloud, but they were also telling the router to expose them in the internet through this interesting concept called UPnP. And because of that, if you go to Shodan and enter the search string of that firmware, you're going to see all of these exposed and people having no idea that they can be accessed. And obviously, I'm not encouraging you to do it, but you can access them and you can look into people's living rooms, bedrooms, garages, and everything, because these are indoor cameras. So stuff that people use to monitor, I don't know, their maids or babysitters or whatever. So we tried to create some awareness about it. Obviously, there were more than that. There were also a remote command execution exploit, but that's not the point. The problem was, to this point, there were undocumented, hard-coded passwords in the firmware, and the devices were directly exposed in the internet because of UPnP. Next, weak or no encryption. We've seen devices that ask for the user's email credentials. Why? To send email reports. Now, obviously, they could set up their own SMTP server and use that to send email reports. But some companies are more professional than others. Some companies maybe don't know how to set up an SMTP server, and they ask the user to tell their SMTP credentials for their own email account. So basically, I entered my Gmail account into the device, and the device used that to send email notifications. Now, upon further analysis, we discovered that when the device synchronized with their cloud, it was sending my username and password, like literally my email and my email password, to their servers. They were calling it encryption, but it was just obfuscation. So it was not encryption with symmetric keys or something like that. It was simply bit flipping by 6 bytes. So like A becomes E, B becomes F, and so on and so forth. So with a simple script, anybody could have reversed that and exposed my email password. So what else? A big deal is command injection exploits. So these are more serious, more difficult to detect. You have to actually do reverse engineering. You have to actually do some hacking on the device to figure out that it's happening. But this can provide root access, full system access on an IoT device in your house without the device actually being connected, I mean being directly accessible from the internet. So as an example, there's a power outlet by Edimax. We've presented it over and over at a number of conferences. And what happens is that when the power outlet synchronizes with their cloud, you send a command to their cloud, to the power outlet, and the power outlet will execute your command. And the only thing that you need in order to compromise somebody is the MAC address of the power outlet. So basically, if I own one of those and I give it to you, you put it into your house. I know the MAC address because I wrote it down before I gave it to you. And then, bam, I have root access into your network, and I can pivot to hack all your other devices. It's that simple. And it's, again, it's not difficult. It's quite easy, and it's happening, and it can be proven. This is particularly tricky because you can actually brute force the entire space of MAC addresses. It's like 16 million for that vendor, and get root access and deploy a botnet agent on all the power outlets from that vendor. Now, in this particular case, we've notified Edimax, and they said that they're going to publish an update. It took them 6 months. We said, OK. And they did publish an update. But if we have time, I'm going to show you what happened with that update and another big issue. Very old services. You're going to buy devices that have FTP servers dating 10 years back. You're going to buy devices that have web servers. Actually, most smart devices run some small web server like tiny HTTPD or light HTTPD. And those are going to be at least 3 or 4 years old, with all the vulnerabilities since then up until today. So be mindful of that. What else? This is an easy one. Most devices create a hotspot when they turn on for the initial configuration. A lot of them forget to turn it off. So all you have to do is basically just see if it's still on and turn it off yourself. And this is an important one, bad user experience on firmware updates. If you want an advice on how to determine if a smart device is secure or not, there's only one thing that you need to look at: how it does updates. That's all. If it requires user interaction, if it requires you to upload the binary file into a web interface and push update, or download the firmware manually, upload it into their web management interface and push update, it's a shit device. Don't buy it. Throw it away. Why? Because it's going to get outdated at some point and you're not going to update it. If you want to see if a device is secure, check if it has automatic updates by design without user intervention. If that's the case, then it's a good product. And we've only seen, I think less than 10 manufacturers that properly implement that into their products. So if you are a vendor or if you are a manufacturer, I strongly advise you to look into this and implement automatic unattended updates. Okay, as I was saying, one of the biggest issues, UPnP. It will directly expose your device in the internet, being accessible by anybody, including hackers, and you will not know that it's happening. The device cloud and mobile app synchronization is prone to a lot of failures, but this is something that you will need to look at with a security researcher standpoint. So this is something that mostly we're seeing and the average user doesn't see, I'm afraid. And of course, this is the case with all applications because sincerely, IoTs are simply computers with an operating system and an application on top of that operating system. That's what an IoT is. It's like a web server, if you will. So you have hardware, operating system, and web application. And much like all other web applications, they can be prone to, much like a web app is prone to SQL injection, IoTs can be prone to command injection. So, I think we have time for the bonus slide. Remember I was telling you about the conversation with Edimax and how they said that they're implementing the update. We were doing a demo in China with the power outlet at this huge security conference, like, I don't know, 1,000 people in the audience and blah, blah, blah. And literally the day before, we see this message. Do you want to upgrade the firmware? And we're like, come on. We're not going to be able to do the demos because of the update. And the hack is not going to work. The exploit is not going to work. Whatever are we going to do? So this is what happened. We pushed OK. By the way, another thing, you couldn't go back from this. So if you restarted the application or whatever, it was still showing, it was forcing you to push the OK button and apply the update. And we're like, good job, Edimax, forcing the user to update the software. It's a critical update, big security issue. Now look what happens when we actually did push the OK button. Notice anything? Yeah. So the update process for Edimax was sending us to a non-mobile friendly website where we would download from our mobile phones a binary firmware with no instructions on how to deploy it on the power outlet. And we're like, oh, okay, we're good. No worries. So yeah, the demo went fine. All the hacks went fine. We actually hacked the power outlet in Romania from the stage in China, and it was awesome. Everybody was happy. So the biggest problem with IoTs is that they're insanely difficult when it comes to attacks. It's insanely difficult to defend against it, simply because you have no idea that it's happening. I mean, you buy a smart power outlet or a smart light bulb or a smart Barbie doll or a smart whatever, and you put it into your house, you start using it. Nobody, and I dare you to show any hands in this audience who checks their devices for security issues before they use them. Anybody? I do. So 3 people. So users don't usually check their devices for security issues before they plug them into their houses. And this is exactly why those botnets happen, okay? Because when you don't know you have to defend against something, you're not going to add defenses for that. So yeah. And you cannot exactly install antivirus on your light bulb. It can lead to full network compromise. If I get system access on a smart power outlet, then I can pivot into the rest of your network and start attacking all your other devices. Then obviously it leads to IoT botnets. I think there's about 5 million compromised devices right now spread across the 8 botnet families that I've described earlier. So those are simply devices that aggregate a huge, an incredible amount of bandwidth that can be used to target and DDoS different types of companies. And also, if I was an attacker and I wanted to hack you or you or you, I would use it as an APT, which stands for Advanced Persistent Threat. I would not do anything. I would just be silent in your network, in that light bulb, and monitor the activities in your house. Just try to gather intelligence, try to sniff some of your connections from your mobile phone, from your computer, and just try to be as discreet as possible while I extract information from your house. So I think I fit in time. We have like 6 minutes for questions. So thank you so much.
So it's time for tough questions for Jay. Anyone? Anyone? Because your question... Oh, sure.
Hello, Jay.
Hi.
Too close to that. There's a trend, at least I'm referring here to consumer networks and the router you put in your home, the smart bulb, smart plug, and so on. Some manufacturers of routers and other devices are starting to integrate cloud-based security solutions from providers like Bitdefender, Trend Micro, and so on. Are those really effective? Are those the solution for consumers, or do they need something else on top?
Okay, I'm going to be very, very honest with you right now. From a security standpoint, from the defense standpoint, we are in infancy. There's absolutely no way to gauge how effective Bitdefender is versus Trend Micro versus Kaspersky versus all the other solutions when it comes to IoT security. Obviously, we're going to say that we have the most experience. We're going to say that we detect so many things. But when it comes to IoT security, there's no test to validate which solution is best. My particular take is pick a vendor that you trust, get that solution, and we're going to see in 1, 2, 3 years. Again, it's still early. These attacks are shaping right now. Protecting against a brute force attack on Telnet should be trivial, even though we're the only ones that implemented the protection for that, wink, wink. But it's trivial to implement for all the other vendors. So protecting against a brute force attack is not that hard to implement. So that's going to be standard. I would say that that should be the de facto standard in any solution. Then a vulnerability assessment module is also important to tell you if you have open ports, open internet services. We've seen light bulbs that had Telnet enabled on them. So a light bulb from Spangled that is also a Wi-Fi repeater, which is really cool. I mean, you put it in your bedroom, in your living room, in your kitchen, bathroom, everywhere, and you have like this mesh of Wi-Fi nodes. Awesome. And now we get an email from a customer saying, your product said that my Spangled light bulbs have Telnet on them. Really? I had no idea. And it was Telnet with root and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you could actually Telnet into the light bulb and hijack the traffic because they were routing traffic. So brute force protection, vulnerability analysis, this should be like the de facto standard when it comes to IoT security. And then all the other things. I mean, we're researching anomaly detection like machine learning for trying to understand how devices behave and flag misbehavior, exploit prevention like a traditional IDS, and so on and so forth.
Thank you.
I also have a question.
Please.
There have been a lot of incidents in which botnets have been involved. Have you seen army of webcams or other IoT devices mining cryptocurrency? Would you see this as a trend?
They've tried it. Actually, they've tried it 3 months ago. So we've seen some of the payloads in the honeypot started to mine currency, but the CPU power in these ARM processors is not that powerful. And even though you have like 10,000 or 50,000 of them, it's not going to be as effective for mining, cryptocurrency. It's the most efficient way to use them is that use the bandwidth to DDoS. That's the most efficient way to use them. Okay, please.
Hi, I have a question. So you said to enable automatic updates on the devices, but honestly, I don't trust anyone. So is there an organism to supervise the updates and to give their okay that the update is actually secure, or does this fall on the user to install it and then test for vulnerabilities?
You know, I disagree with you, if I may. I mean, the moment you purchase the device itself, that means you trusted that company enough to purchase the device. There are organisms that test the devices themselves. So in America, for example, there's an initiative by I Am the Cavalry and FTC to validate devices from a security standpoint. So very soon, probably in 1 year tops, you're not going to be able to sell a device in the US if you have Telnet on it, or if you have default credentials by design. So they are testing, and these kind of institutions are testing the security of the device itself in its default factor. Updates, it's a long conversation to be had, but in my opinion, if you trusted the device, you should trust the updates as well. Let me give you an example, Nest. You put it, it updates, you don't even have access to the updates themselves. You cannot even see what they're doing with the updates, and you don't have the option to opt out. And I wouldn't want to opt out because that would effectively, if I'm a producer, and actually now I am a producer of hardware, I don't want to let my customers have the possibility to not update. It's a nightmare for me to maintain, and I'm going to have like 10%, 15% of people that can be compromised. And I would rather drop that customer base than have them compromised and going to press with that. Any other questions?
Well,
Come on, now's your chance.
time
Anything.
is up.
Oh,
Yep.
I have 9 seconds. 8, 7.
6.
Okay, thank you so much for having the time, and yeah, I'll see you soon.
Thank you.